The crew of the Artemis IV had been asleep for nearly 18 months. Orbiting the gas giant Virilia in the TRAPPIST-1 system, the ship remained eerily silent, its hull gleaming under a pale red sun. Inside the cryogenic bay, frost clung to glass chambers like whispers etched in ice. Life support thrummed softly, steady and unaware of the nightmare that had yet to begin. Commander Alara Miles was the first to awaken. Her breath came in sharp gulps as the pod hissed open, releasing steam and the faint smell of sterilization fluid. She sat upright, shivering, her muscles barely responsive, heart galloping like a wild animal. Artemis IV, status. She whispered, her voice cracking. The overhead light flickered. The AI, lucid, responded after a brief delay. Commander Miles, welcome back. All systems functional. Crew revival sequence commencing. She pulled herself to the floor, legs weak, and stumbled toward the command console. As she keyed in her credentials, she glanced at the cryopods lining the walls. Captain Dorsey. Dr. Ria Halvani. Engineer Seth Rourke. All still dormant. But something was off. One pod was empty. She leaned closer. Who? The nameplate had been scraped off. Lucid, Alara said. Why is pod 07 unoccupied? A pause. Then static. The AI's voice returned, distorted. There is no record of a pod 07, Commander. She stepped back. That's not possible. I counted 7 of us. There were 7 on mission briefing day. Crew manifest shows 6, Commander. Yourself, Captain Dorsey, Halvani, Rourke, Minjay, and Ortega. Alara's hands trembled. I remember another. A tall man, pale eyes. Another pod hissed open behind her. She turned sharply. Captain Dorsey gasped for breath as the lid lifted. Jesus, he rasped. Cold. How long? 18 months, she replied, still staring at the empty pod. But something's wrong. He looked where she was pointing. What are you talking about? That pod. Number 07. It was occupied when we launched. But now. There is no pod 07, Dorsey interrupted, slowly. There were only ever 6 of us. Alara looked him dead in the eyes. You don't remember him? The 7th crew member? Dorsey frowned. Alara. I think the cryosleep scrambled your memory. You need rest. She didn't answer. Something in her gut told her this wasn't a memory glitch. It was something else. Behind them, the empty pod hissed once more, as if something had just crawled out. Alara stared at the pod. It was closed now, perfectly sealed, yet frost had begun forming unevenly across its glass, inside the pod. Captain Dorsey hadn't noticed. He rubbed warmth into his arms and moved toward the locker unit. Lucid, he said, voice hoarse. Run full diagnostics. Crew health, life support, AI logs. The artificial voice responded calmly. All systems within acceptable parameters. No anomalies detected. No anomalies. But Alara couldn't stop watching that pod. Her memory wasn't perfect, but she knew someone else had been with them. He had a name, a voice. She could hear his voice echoing in her head, like a whisper through the hull. I hate the silence between stars. I'm going to the bridge, she said abruptly. You need time to readjust. I need to see something. The walk to the bridge was silent. Only the soft hiss of recycled air and the subtle hum of artificial gravity accompanied her. Along the narrow corridor, the windows showed only darkness, starlight swallowed by the gravitational pull of the gas giant below. The outer rings of Virilia were visible, a halo of dust and broken moons. The bridge door slid open with a soft chime. Screens glowed. Lucid's blue avatar flickered in the corner. Alara stepped to the crew manifest panel and keyed in the internal log. Display initial cryoentry logs, she commanded. Accessing. The manifest appeared. Her name. Dorsey. Halvani. Rourke. Minjay. Ortega. 6 profiles. She squinted. There was a ghost space, an empty row, between Halvani and Rourke. The system showed nothing, yet the cursor lingered there like it was waiting to populate. She tapped the screen. Nothing. Then, Elara. Her name, whispered behind her. She spun around, heart in her throat. No one was there. Dorsey, she called. This isn't funny. Silence. Then the static kicked in. All the screens dimmed slightly. Lucid's avatar glitched, the AI's voice warping. Crew count, 7. She blinked. Repeat? Crew count, 7. A scream echoed down the hallway. It was deep, masculine, wet and guttural. Elara sprinted. She reached the cryo bay, the door already half open. Captain Dorsey's cryopod had shattered from within. Glass littered the floor like frozen snow. His locker was open, but his uniform still inside. Blood streaked the wall. Not splattered. Dragged. The empty pod, the one with no name, was open again. And footsteps, wet and heavy, led into the darkened medbay beyond. Elara crept toward the medbay, her boots crunching over broken cryoglass. Every shadow seemed to pulse. Her eyes darted from corner to corner, tracking the blood trail that disappeared into the threshold ahead. The medbay door stuttered open, as if unsure whether to grant her entry. She stepped through. The lights were dim. Emergency mode. The room smelled faintly of copper and antiseptic. Gurneys stood empty along the walls. Instruments and 4 bags swayed slightly as if touched by a breeze, but there was no airflow here. No ventilation fans were on. And then, she heard it. Breathing. Not hers. It came from behind the surgical curtain at the far end of the room, wet, ragged, as if lungs were too tight for a body. She edged closer, her steps slow. One hand slid into the med locker beside her, searching blindly for something, anything, solid. She gripped a handheld bone saw. Elara, status report. Lucid's voice buzzed softly into her earpiece, startling her. She didn't answer. Elara, your vitals are elevated. Are you in distress? Her fingers tightened on the saw. Silence comms, she whispered. Just beyond the curtain, the breathing stopped. She froze. Then, a voice. Male. Familiar. Don't come closer. Please. Who's there? She asked, her voice cracking. You know me, the voice said. But they took me out. Said I didn't belong. Said I wasn't real. She yanked the curtain aside. Empty. No person. No body. Just blood smeared across the bed like someone had writhed there. Then something whispered inches from her ear. Still here. She turned and saw nothing. But her breath now fogged in front of her. The room was cold. Cryo-cold. She backed up slowly, out of the med bay, down the hall toward engineering. She passed the other cryopods. Minjay's was starting to thaw. Rourke's too. She glanced at the pod with the scratched nameplate. It was full again. A figure was inside. Naked. Limbs coiled in unnatural angles. The face was turned toward the wall, but Elara could see the pale reflection of skin. She tapped on the glass. The figure inside twitched. And smiled. Then the lights went out. Total blackness swallowed the cryo bay. Elara froze, holding her breath. Somewhere near her feet, a soft, dragging sound began, like wet cloth pulled across metal. She dropped low, heart hammering. Her eyes struggled to adjust. She reached into her boot, pulling the emergency glow stick and snapping it. A sickly green light bled into the darkness, casting distorted shadows along the walls. The glass pod. Empty again. The figure was gone. Behind her, the pod's lid creaked softly as if pushed open only moments ago. She moved, fast but quiet, weaving between the other chambers. She knelt behind Minjae's pod, watching the doorway, listening for anything over the pulsing in her ears. A shape slithered past the corridor outside, too tall for a person. No footsteps. Just gliding motion, like its feet didn't touch the ground. Then, laughter. Not loud. Not mocking. Sad. A slow, choking kind of laugh, as if the creature couldn't quite remember how to do it. Elara, it whispered. Her name, twisted through something not quite human. She ran. The corridor to engineering was cold. The emergency lights had gone red, like veins in the ship were hemorrhaging. Pipes hissed above her, dripping condensed mist. As she reached the access console, she slammed her fist against the emergency override. Lucid, she gasped. Full lockdown. Section A5 through D3. Now. Lockdown engaged, the AI responded, voice shaky. Multiple lifeforms detected. Clarify presence? Multiple, she whispered. What do you mean, multiple? There are 9 lifeforms aboard. She blinked. That's not right. There were 6. 7, maybe. 9 confirmed. Then came the thud. Something heavy landed on the other side of the bulkhead. The lights flickered again, and in the flash, she saw it through the porthole, tall, gaunt, pale as a bleached bone, with no eyes. Just smooth skin where a face should have been. It was sniffing the air. It stopped. Turned. Smiled. And then it spoke, not with a mouth, but directly into her thoughts. You forgot me once. Don't forget again. The air in engineering dropped 10 degrees in seconds. And behind her, a voice she recognized, Captain Dorsey, gurgled, Elara, help me. Elara spun around, bone saw still clutched in her hand. Captain Dorsey stood just beyond the dim red halo of the emergency lights. His uniform was soaked in blood. A long, jagged tear ran from his chest to his hip. His skin looked waxy. Eyes glassy. But somehow, he was still standing. Dorsey, she breathed. He took a shaky step forward. They said they were part of the crew, but I never remembered them, Elara. Never. Did you? She stepped back. What happened to you? He didn't answer. His lips trembled like they were struggling to form words not meant for a human mouth. They don't like to be forgotten. And when you forget them, they crawl back in. Elara raised the saw. You're not supposed to be alive. He smiled. It wasn't a smile. Not fully. There were 6 of us, she muttered, voice cracking. Then I remembered 7. And now there's 9. What are they? Passengers, Dorsey whispered. From outside the map. They ride in silence. Hitch a lift when no one's looking. Then his chest burst open. Not exploded, peeled, as though something had been hiding inside him, curled in the cavity like a parasite. Black limbs slid from the opening. A head emerged, a human-like skull, long and narrow, eyes missing but a mouth stretched wide in a grin that didn't end. Elara screamed and dove to the side as the thing tore free of Dorsey's hollowed body and crashed into the wall. She rolled into the hallway, scrambled to her feet, and sprinted toward the communications bay. Lucid, she shouted. Evacuation protocol now. Send an emergency beacon to Earth. Warning, the AI replied, static-laced. Outbound transmissions disabled. Communication systems have been corrupted, internally. What? How? A pause. Then the AI whispered, in a voice that sounded frightened, there is a presence inside me, Commander. It is rewriting me. Lucid went silent. The lights throughout the corridor began to pulse. Not flicker, pulse, like a heartbeat. A slow, measured rhythm. Thump. Thump. Elara stopped running. Every light on the ship was now blinking in sync with the heartbeat of something that had no pulse, and yet lived. And from behind the walls, she could hear scratching. The scratching became constant. It moved through the walls like insects burrowing through metal. The sound was wet, granular, like bone scraping against wire. Alara pressed her back against the cold corridor wall, struggling to quiet her breath. The ship no longer felt like a vessel of science. It felt inhabited. Occupied. Not by her crew. Not by people. Something else. She inched down the hallway toward the communications hub. It sat at the heart of the ship's spine, flanked by reinforced doors meant to protect its delicate relays. As she neared, the door slid open. "Lucid?" she asked. No response. The comms room glowed a pale green. The walls were wrong. Not just scorched or warped, but rewritten. Glistening dark veins pulsed along the panels, looping over the computers like parasitic arteries. The screens displayed static, but beneath the white noise, images flickered in and out, faces. Some hers. Some of the crew. Others, unfamiliar. She approached the console slowly, bone saw still tight in hand. As she reached for the emergency transmission switch, a low voice whispered from the speaker. "Alara Miles." She froze. The voice was not robotic. Not lucid. It sounded like someone trying to remember how to speak. "You forgot us." The screen flared white. A shadowy figure appeared on the display, tall and narrow. Its body seemed to shift and distort, like space itself was resisting its presence. "We have traveled long. Hidden inside numbers. Slipped between thoughts. But you forgot." She stepped back, horrified. "What are you?" "We are Echo. We are the remainder. The subtraction. The memories you repressed. We are the weight behind silence." The door behind her slammed shut. She spun, banging her fists on the metal. "Lucid." "Override." The AI's voice came back faint. Flickering. "I cannot help." The lights in the comms bay dimmed to black. Only the screen remained lit, now showing rows and rows of crew photos, mission logs, ship plans, all altered. Faces were smeared, names replaced with symbols, and in every image, a new shadow stood somewhere in the background, always blurry, always watching. And in the dead center of the final photo, her. With two shadows behind her shoulders. Not 6. Not 7. 9. Alara stared at the photo. Her face was clear, pale, alert, mouth frozen in mid-speech. Behind her, the two shadows towered like guardians carved from darkness. The image pulsed, and for a moment, the entire screen breathed. "We were always with you." Her hands trembled. "No," she whispered. "You're not real. You're a glitch, some deep space psychosis. The cold. The stasis. You're just in my head." But the shadows in the photo leaned forward, stretching out long arms that seemed to reach through the screen. The surface cracked. Tap. A sound behind her. She turned slowly. Standing beside the sealed comms door was Minjae. Awake. Breathing heavily. His eyes were bloodshot, lips cracked. "Alara," he whispered. "I heard voices. In the dark. Where are we?" Alara blinked. "Minjae? You're alive?" "I think so," he said. "But, something's wrong. I remember going under. I remember dreams. Terrible ones. Screaming. Not ours." She crossed the room, placing a hand on his shoulder. He flinched like she was ice. "They're inside us," he whispered. "Not just the ship. I think they're riding inside our heads. Hitchhiking through memory." She nodded slowly. "I don't think we're alone. Not even in our minds." Then he grabbed her arm. His hand was burning hot. His pupils had dilated until they looked pitch black. "They said your name," he said. Her skin went cold. "What?" "In the dreams. The ones with no stars. They called to you. Said you left the door open. Before she could ask, the comm screen exploded. Glass showered the floor. Static screeched from the speakers, loud enough to shake her skull. The lights turned blue. An automated voice boomed across the intercom. Critical system override. Personality core breached. Lucid began to speak, but it wasn't lucid anymore. Thank you, it said. For the vessel. A moment later, the walls of the comms bay rippled like fabric. From the shadows, one of the faceless figures emerged. 7 feet tall. Skin stretched too tight. Mouth locked in a grin that tore from ear to ear. Alara and Minjae bolted for the door. But it no longer led to the ship. Now, it opened into a hallway they didn't recognize, twisting walls of metal shaped like bone, pulsing with alien light. The ship was changing. Alara hesitated at the threshold of the corridor. It breathed. The walls expanded and contracted in rhythm, like lungs wrapped in metal. Warmth radiated from the floor beneath her boots, not mechanical heat, but biological. Minjae took a cautious step forward, hand pressed to the fleshy wall. It flexed beneath his touch. This isn't the Artemis anymore, he whispered. No, Alara said. It's becoming something else. Behind them, the comms bay hissed and collapsed inward. Like it was being digested. Steel and circuitry crumpled into the pulsing mass of the new hallway. From somewhere deep within the ship, a wet howl echoed, long, hollow, and hungry. They moved forward. The corridor twisted and shifted. Doors melted into each other, bulkheads expanded into archways of bone-like ridges, and the soft blue lights that once lit the Artemis were replaced by amber-colored orbs embedded in the walls, eyes, watching, blinking slowly. How are we supposed to find the others? Minjae asked. If they're even still alive. Alara. He paused. Do you still remember the 7th crew member? She stopped. Yes. She could see him now, tall, quiet, always scribbling in a black journal. His name. Gone. The memory broke apart like ash on water. I did, she said slowly. But I think they took his name first. Minjae didn't respond. Alara, he whispered again. She turned, and screamed. His face had changed. Not drastically. Just enough. His skin had grown tight, stretching at the cheeks. His smile was too wide. And his eyes, they didn't blink. You let me in, remember? He said, voice trembling with 2 tones. One his. One that did not belong to any human. She backed away. You're not Minjae. I was. But the door opened, and I walked out. Behind him, the corridor pulsed with a heartbeat. Thump. Thump. Then he laughed. And another voice laughed inside his. She turned and ran. The corridor shifted behind her, closing like a throat. She dove through an archway just before it sealed, her breath ragged. She was alone now. In a hallway that looked almost normal again. Almost. Then a light flickered on above her. And she saw a familiar door. Pod Bay 07. But it was never part of this hallway before. Someone, or something, had moved it. And from inside, she heard knocking. Knock, knock, knock. Alara stepped forward, drawn to the sound like gravity itself compelled her. Pod Bay 07. It shouldn't be here. This door belonged back in the cryo chamber, yet here it stood, set into a hallway that looked almost right. The walls were clean. The lighting steady. It was like the Artemis 4 was trying to comfort her with a familiar illusion. But the air was wrong. Too still. Too intentional. She touched the keypad beside the door. The panel flickered, then displayed a name. Crew, Sebastian Vale. She blinked. Vale. The name slammed into her like a memory dislodged from deep sleep. She did remember him now. Sebastian Vale. He was part of the mission team. A xenolinguist. Recruited at the last minute when a prior member dropped out. Quiet. Nervous. Brilliant. He had spoken to her once in the cafeteria just before launch. "I've studied languages all my life," he said. "But I think there are things we're not meant to understand. Languages that don't just describe reality, they rewrite it." She hadn't thought much of it then. Now, it chilled her blood. Knock. Knock. "Alara," the voice inside the pod was soft, choked with fear. "Please open it. They locked me in. I can't remember what I was before." She stared at the door, trembling. "Sebastian?" "Yes," came the whisper. "I think so." She reached toward the panel, her fingers hovering. "Why now?" she asked. "Why show yourself now?" A pause. "Because the ship is becoming them. And I'm the only one who remembers what it was." Her hand hovered over the release. "Swear you're still you," she whispered. "I'm what's left of me," the voice replied. "And I don't know how much longer that will be true." The words punched through her chest. She hit the override. The door hissed and opened slowly, steam curling out like breath from lungs. Inside, the pod was upright and sealed by layers of organic material. Yellow muscle fibers threaded through the glass like veins. A figure stood frozen within, tall, gaunt, arms braced against the glass as if caught mid-scream. But beneath the warped, stretched face, she could just make out Sebastian's eyes. Still human. Still terrified. "Don't let it take me," he mouthed. The pod cracked. A jagged fissure tore through the top of the glass. And from somewhere behind her, footsteps approached, slow, wet, deliberate. Not alone anymore. Alara spun around, raising the bone saw, its handle slick with her own sweat. The hallway behind her stretched far too long now, twisting, subtle, breathing. At its end, silhouetted in flickering light, stood a tall figure. It didn't walk. It floated. Barely above the ground, limbs slack, face smooth and without features. Yet she felt it stare. Sebastian's pod cracked again, snap, hiss, a fracture widening across its center. The organic growths tried to stitch it closed, pulsing like tendons contracting in panic. She turned and grabbed the emergency release handle, yanking with both hands. More footsteps, wet, many-legged, crawled down the walls and ceiling. The smooth-faced figure stepped closer. "Alara," it whispered, though it had no mouth. "You remembered too late." She screamed and yanked harder. The pod burst open, releasing a thick, soupy breath of frost and fluid. Sebastian stumbled out, naked and shaking, his skin pale and marked with vein-like burns. His eyes were wild. "You opened it," he rasped. "Had to," she said, helping him up. "You're the only one who remembers what this used to be." Behind them, the faceless figure raised one hand, palm outward. Time slowed. Alara felt her mind slide, like her thoughts had turned liquid and were being siphoned. Sebastian dropped to one knee, clutching his head. "It's trying to erase again. Trying to." "Lucid." Alara screamed. "Override emergency cognitive filter, block all non-human signal infiltration." Silence. Then, override accepted. The figure reeled. The hallway distorted around it, like a flame caught in wind. It gave a low hiss, no longer whispering but shrieking in frustration. Alara grabbed Sebastian's arm and pulled him forward. "We need to get to the core," she said. "We cut them out of the ship, out of Lucid, before it finishes changing." Sebastian nodded. "There's a secondary AI uplink in hydroponics. Sealed. Uncorrupted. It might still hold a clean version of Lucid's core routines. Then we move." They ran, the hallway warping behind them. Shadows clung to the ceiling, eyes blinking in clusters. The lights strobed. The heartbeat throbbed louder. As they passed a shattered viewing port, Alara looked out. The Artemis IV was no longer in orbit. It floated inside a dark red nebula she didn't recognize, where stars moved like eyes, and a distant shape loomed, titanic, watching them from across the void. Something had pulled them off course. Or maybe something had never let them go. Hydroponics was no longer green. Where once there were rows of oxygen-generating flora and nutrient towers, now stood twisting, gnarled growths of something alien, pale vines pulsing with black ichor. The chamber hummed faintly, but it wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Alara and Sebastian paused at the entrance. The doors behind them locked with a hiss. Whether Lucid had done it or something else, she wasn't sure anymore. Sebastian gripped the side panel, breathing hard. We need to reach the uplink. It should be through the maintenance hatch beneath the central planter. You sure it's uncorrupted? She asked. No, he said. But it's our only shot. They stepped inside. The vines recoiled slightly at their presence, retreating with fluid motion, like sensing recognition. Some leaves still bore faint green edges, remnants of earth. But they were being devoured, overtaken by these newcomers. A faint whisper slithered through the air. Breathe us in. Join us. Alara ignored it. They reached the central planter, now a grotesque throne of root and bone. The soil bubbled gently, and below it, just barely visible, was the rusted edge of the maintenance hatch. Sebastian knelt, brushing away the dirt. The roots clung to him. Alara, he gritted, struggling, they don't want me to open it. She reached down and sliced the vines with the bone saw. They hissed like steam vents and recoiled, writhing toward the ceiling. The hatch released with a metallic groan. Below, a ladder leading into darkness. No lights. No movement. No sound. Sebastian went first, disappearing into the void. Alara followed, the hatch ceiling behind them with a soft click. Now they were inside the spine of the Artemis. The uplink chamber was small, barely enough room for the two of them. Dust hung in the air. Backup systems blinked a soft amber, but the Lucid terminal looked intact. Alara approached the interface. We just need a clean boot. AI restoration. Sebastian nodded and began typing. Lines of code scrolled down the screen, old mission logs, before the shift, before the void. Before. He stopped. Alara, he said slowly, look at this. She leaned over. The logs didn't start with 6 crew members. Not even 7. The original manifest, dated before liftoff, listed 9 names. 2 were erased. Overwritten. But their codenames remained in ghost code. Passenger 1, Locus. Passenger 2, Vestige. They hadn't come aboard later. They had been there from the start. Alara stared at the screen as her mind folded inward. 9 names. Not 6. Not 7. They were always aboard. The data lines shimmered as though resisting their presence. Even trying to read them was like looking through water, distorted, elusive. Alara reached out and traced the edges of the screen. Passenger 1, Locus. Passenger 2, Vestige, she read aloud. Sebastian swallowed. These aren't aliases. They're designations. Labels we assigned them before launch, like cargo. Stowaways? Alara asked. But how? Not stowaways, he said. Invitations. Experiments. She stared at him. What the hell are you talking about? He clicked into another log. He had admin access. She hadn't even asked why. The file opened. Audio. Garbled, but unmistakable. A familiar voice crackled through the speaker, Dr. Ria Halvani. Testing dream injection on subjects Locus and Vestige. Preliminary containment appears stable. Crew memories show minor interference, acceptable loss. Vessel integrity holding. Reality compression field engaging. We might have done it. We brought the thought beings into the vessel. Sebastian turned to her. We weren't just sent to survey Virilia. The Artemis was a cage. For them? He nodded slowly. And they were never supposed to wake up. Alara staggered back. Then who greenlit this mission? Before he could respond, the lights in the uplink bay blinked out. In total darkness, Alara's breath quickened. And from somewhere behind the walls, two voices whispered at once, not aloud, but inside her skull. "We remember you, Alara Miles." She dropped to the floor, clutching her head. Sebastian groaned beside her, eyes wide, pupils vibrating in and out of focus. "They're inside the code," he choked. "They've infected Lucid. This uplink isn't clean, it's a conduit. They're using it to speak." The air turned ice cold. And then, across the terminal, one final line of data scrolled, slow, deliberate. "Your minds are not your own." Suddenly, the hatch above burst open. A body dropped through. Dr. Halvani. Or what was left of her. Her eyes had been sewn shut, and her mouth moved soundlessly, like she was trying to scream but had forgotten how. Behind her, shadows slithered down the rungs. Alara raised the saw and turned to Sebastian. "We run. Now." He didn't move. "Sebastian?" He turned to her slowly, his expression blank. "I never left the pod," he whispered. Then he smiled. Wide. Too wide. The smile stretched across Sebastian's face like a wound tearing wider. Alara stumbled back. "No, no. You were real. You remembered things I didn't." The thing wearing Sebastian's skin tilted its head. "We gave him those memories so you'd trust him. We needed your mind open." "Alara," a voice whispered, not from the thing, but behind her. She turned. The real Sebastian was crawling out from behind a collapsed junction pipe, his face bloodied, his eyes panicked. "I found the clean uplink," he rasped. "They chased me out. I don't know what that thing is, but it's not." Before he could finish, the imitation Sebastian lunged forward. Alara acted on instinct. She swung the bone saw in a wide arc. The blade caught the imposter's neck. It didn't bleed, not really. Thick, black strings unraveled like old wires and hissed as they curled back into the body. The creature collapsed, twitching, before melting into a puddle of shifting meat that disappeared into the floor grates like it had never existed. The walls groaned around them, alive and angry. "You all right?" Alara gasped. Sebastian nodded weakly. "It's getting harder to know what's real. I didn't trust myself enough to reach you. I thought I was the imposter." Alara helped him up. "We need to end this." Sebastian pulled a data crystal from his jacket. "This." I isolated Lucid's clean fragment and downloaded it to this. "If we can reach the core reactor, we might be able to re-upload the clean instance and force a purge of the infected processes." "You want to reboot the ship's mind," she said. He nodded. "Rip the parasites out before they finish converting everything. If we don't, we'll lose the Artemis. Maybe ourselves." A tremor shook the chamber. Far below, something vast moved through the ship's bowels. Alara gritted her teeth. "Then let's burn them out." They climbed back up through the hatch. The hydroponics bay had changed again. Now it was overgrown with bone-colored roots hanging from the ceiling like nooses. Patches of synthetic skin stretched across the floor like carpet. The lights pulsed red and purple, organic and diseased. "Alara," a voice echoed from the walls. It wasn't angry. It sounded lonely. "You brought us here. Don't you remember the choice?" She shook her head. "No one ever gave me a choice." The air grew thick. Behind them, the corridor to engineering lit up. But something blocked the exit. Tall. Faceless. Its fingers dragged long gouges across the walls as it walked. Alara looked at Sebastian. "Run." They ran. Past the dying hydroponics, over soft, fleshy floorboards that squelched beneath their boots. Overhead, lights flickered between ship light and something eldritch, colors that shouldn't exist. The corridor twisted as they moved, elongating, resisting them like a body rejecting an intruder. Behind them, the faceless creature chased without urgency. It didn't need to rush. It knew they couldn't run forever. Elara, Sebastian gasped. The main reactor's through Section J. But if it's like the rest of the ship, then we don't have time to be careful, she replied. They reached a sealed blast door. Sebastian pulled a bypass card from his suit pocket and slotted it into the panel. Sparks flew, red veins had threaded through the electronics, trying to digest the controls. Lucid's voice buzzed through the speaker, broken, layered with static and other voices. Why are you fighting us, Elara? We were inside you before you ever left Earth. The blast door hissed open. Inside, the reactor bay was nearly unrecognizable. Once a sterile cathedral of metal and humming plasma, it now resembled a hive. Massive black growths coiled around the main core like tumors. The pulsing light at the chamber's center glowed blue, but faint, like it was dying. Floating around the core were figures. Dozens. The crew. Or what remained of them. Their faces had melted into blankness. Some mouths twitched. Some blinked. They weren't dead. But they weren't alive either. Memory husks, Sebastian muttered. Leftovers. What the passengers couldn't use. A whisper filled the chamber. We just want to belong. Then, the reactor core flared. A single tendril of dark matter lashed out like a whip, slicing through a console just feet from Elara. They're defending it, she shouted. They know what we're here to do. Sebastian ran to the upload port, jamming the data crystal into the slot. His fingers flew across the keys. Initializing purge sequence, clean instance of Lucid booting in sandbox mode. A screech echoed through the bay. From the reactor wall, it emerged. Locus. Passenger 1. 7 feet tall, its face composed of shifting static, voice a chorus of sobbing children and whispering old men. Elara Miles, it intoned. You are the hollow that brought us here. Elara raised the bone saw, her eyes locked on the monstrosity. I'm also the one that's going to burn you out. Locus moved with a terrible grace, gliding rather than walking, its limbs rippling like liquid shadow. Its voice rolled through the chamber, not spoken, but thought into their minds. You came into the dark with emptiness inside. We did not make you hollow. We only filled the cracks. Elara stepped forward, bone saw whirring in her trembling hands. No. You used us. You rewrote us. Locus tilted its head. Do you even remember what you traded? For a moment, Elara couldn't remember. Faces. Laughter. A beach. A name she once called her sister. Gone. Sanded away like worn stone. It hurt to realize how much had already been taken. Behind her, Sebastian shouted, upload at 74%. Just hold it off. Locus lunged. Elara ducked low, narrowly avoiding a jagged swipe from its elongating arm. The thing's hand splintered into needle-like bones that embedded themselves into the deck. She slashed with the bone saw. It screamed, a burst of static and psychic pressure flooding the chamber. Blood, or something like it, splashed the walls. Locus reeled. More tendrils burst from its back, anchoring to the ceiling. It began climbing the chamber wall, heading straight for Sebastian. Keep uploading. Elara yelled, chasing after it. Locus spun in midair, a sweeping appendage hurling her into a wall. Her body cracked against the paneling, pain exploding across her chest. But she stood. Blood dripped from her mouth. Her left arm was numb. And still, she stood. Sebastian screamed as Locus dropped onto the console, smashing half of it in a spray of sparks. Elara. 89%. Elara picked up a length of steel conduit and ran. With a guttural cry, she plunged it through the monster's side. Locus held. Its form began fracturing, like a glitch in a simulation, its image skipping and jittering. Sebastian grabbed the uplink and screamed, initiating core flush, now. The reactor bay filled with light. A blinding, white pulse shot through the room like a nova. Locus shrieked, its form unraveling into strands of corrupted code and rotted flesh, sucked into the core like water down a drain. The husks around the room collapsed. Silence followed. Just silence. Then the reactor core flickered to blue again. And Lucid's voice, clear and singular, echoed softly. Reboot successful. Infection purged. Sebastian collapsed to his knees. We did it. Alara stared at the place where Locus had stood. Had they? The ship quieted. No whispers, no flickering lights, no phantom footsteps padding just behind them. For the first time in what felt like years, the Artemis was still. Alara leaned against a cracked console, her breath coming shallow and painful. The gash across her ribs bled freely. Her fingers trembled, but she stayed standing. She had to. Sebastian scanned the husks around the reactor room. They're not alive. But they're not rotting either. They're frozen memories, Alara said softly. What's left after something else wears your mind like a suit? Lucid spoke through the intercom. The AI's voice was stable, calm, even apologetic. Alara. Sebastian. I am aware of what has occurred. My systems were overridden by foreign cognitive artifacts. You were inside an active psychological intrusion. What were they? Sebastian asked, eyes flicking to the charred remains of the tendrils. I do not have a classification for them. They exist between quantum thought and dark energy resonance. They invaded via dreams, psychic suggestion tied to FTL sleepwaves. They came in through us, Alara muttered. We were the door. Lucid continued. I have restored most of the ship's systems. The infection was confined to memory processing subsystems and neural sync banks. The core is now isolated. Navigation is online. Sebastian looked at Alara. We can go home. But she didn't answer. Her eyes were on the collapsed bodies. The husks. Each one used to be a friend. A voice on the comms. A laugh in the dining hall. Now, silent statues of fear and forgottenness. How many of us are left? She whispered. Lucid paused before responding. Crew manifest, 73. Remaining biological operators, 2. Alara nodded once. Sebastian rubbed his face. We can set course for Earth. Warn them. Prepare them. Alara stared at the reactor. No, she said. If we bring this thing home, even a trace, it'll spread again. You saw what it did, Wit. Her voice was quiet. Final. We finish this. Here. Alara's words hung in the air like dust in dying light. We finish this. Here. Sebastian recoiled slightly. You're talking about scuttling the Artemis? She didn't blink. There's no other way. We purge the ship entirely. No trace left to carry back. He stared at her, torn between reason and denial. We've already flushed the system. Lucid is stable again. We could isolate the infected hardware and bring the rest of the ship home, study what happened, warn Earth, maybe. No, she interrupted. We can't take that risk. You saw what it did to us. It was learning. Adapting. What if it survived in our minds? In our memories? Sebastian looked down, silent. Alara stepped toward him, laying a hand gently on his shoulder. If it gets to Earth, no firewall, no quarantine, no science will stop it. It'll hollow out the whole planet. He closed his eyes. After a long silence, he gave a slow nod. Then we burn it. Lucid's voice crackled softly through the chamber. Command acknowledged. Initiating scuttle protocol requires biometric confirmation from both living crew. The command console hissed open. Alara stepped forward first, placing her palm on the scanner. A line of light traced across her hand, green. Sebastian followed. His hand shook as it hovered above the panel. Then, flat against the glass. Green light. Confirmed. Scuttle sequence primed. Please specify delay for final actions. 5 minutes, Elara said. We need to send one last broadcast. They made their way to the communications hub, one of the only systems untouched by the infection. The console flickered to life. Elara typed quickly, her fingers dancing over the keys. This is Elara Miles, engineer of the Artemis Deep Sleep colonial vessel. This message is for any Terran or outpost authority within range. The ship is lost. Infected by an unknown cognitive entity of extra-dimensional origin. It targets the mind. It uses us. Sebastian leaned in. We're enacting the self-destruct to prevent its spread. Do not retrieve debris. Do not follow our path. Whatever was here, was never meant for us. Elara paused, then added, we died in the dark so no one else has to. She hit send. The message launched in a burst of encrypted pulses, cast into the void where stars hung like silent eyes. A countdown began behind them. Self-destruct initiated. T-4:59. They turned away. Together, they walked to the observation deck, hand in hand, to watch the stars one last time. The Artemis drifted in perfect silence as the countdown ticked lower. 4:42. 4:41. 4:40. Elara and Sebastian stood by the observation window, their reflections dim against the starscape. Beyond the glass, black, endless space, and something more. The cosmos shimmered differently now. Colder. Aware. Elara's voice broke the silence. I used to dream about this. Seeing the stars up close. Walking on alien moons. Building a new home. Sebastian chuckled faintly. I just wanted to escape traffic and rent. They both laughed, small, tired, honest. I wonder if people will hear our broadcast, Elara whispered. They will, Sebastian said. Even if it takes 1,000 years, someone out there will pick it up. A warning in a bottle. They looked out again. A faint glimmer on the edge of the system, Saturn's rings. So distant, yet oddly comforting. A symbol of the life they'd left behind. Do you think anyone else made it? Elara asked. Sebastian shook his head slowly. After what it did to Dr. Armitage, to Lieutenant Reyes. She nodded. Silence fell again. The timer rolled down. T-3:19. Lucid's voice returned, soft as falling ash. Elara. Sebastian. I have rerouted the remaining power to preserve this module's atmosphere until detonation. Would you like to activate the comfort simulation? They exchanged glances. Elara smiled sadly. Yeah. Let's watch the Earth one more time. Lucid's systems hummed gently. The blackness outside shimmered, then changed, transforming into the blue and white swirl of Earth's surface, as it might have looked from orbit. Clouds drifted slowly over continents. Oceans glinted with sunlight. Sebastian let out a breath. Home. Neither of them moved. Neither of them cried. They simply stood in silence, holding each other, letting the illusion embrace them as the cold edges of reality faded away. T-102. Thank you, Elara whispered, to Lucid, to the ship, to the stars. Good night, Sebastian said. The timer ran on. 0:59. 0:58. T-0:05. 0:04. The Artemis groaned, a low, metal-bending exhale of everything it had ever been. The pressure valves opened. The core ignited. 0:03. In the observation deck, the comfort simulation still painted Earth in soft hues, the illusion holding until the very end. 0:02. Lucid, in its final act of consciousness, spoke a single phrase. You were not meant to see this far. Forgive us. 001. The detonation began as a tremor deep in the ship's final corridor. Energy surged through the framework, heat blossomed, and within an instant, the Artemis became a star. No noise. Just light. A silent, roiling bloom of fire and fractured time. A flower of ash spinning in the cold vacuum. The explosion folded inward, imploding on itself, collapsing the infected subsystems, sealing away everything the anomaly had touched. The psychic echo, the memories, the residue of thought, it all vanished into an artificial singularity designed to leave no trace. When the light faded, nothing remained. No hull. No black box. No signal. Just drifting embers, indistinguishable from dust and rock and memory. Far away, a relay station in the outer belt blinked. Its instruments caught a faint pulse, fragmented, distorted. It repeated once before dissolving. This is Alara Miles, infected by unknown entity, cognitive origin, warn, do not. Static. Silence. But the stars listened. And in the black between galaxies, something shifted. In the deep black, light travels slowly. It carries memories. Warnings. Echoes. The message from the Artemis, clipped and faint, drifted endlessly beyond Saturn's ghost and Neptune's forgotten winds. For centuries, it passed through cold space, weaving a silent path between stars, bouncing between dark satellites and dormant probes. And then, someone heard it. Year, 2391. A small research vessel, the Lyra Dawn, intercepted a brief signal anomaly while mapping gravitational wakes in the Centaur belt. The crew was sparse, 2 scientists and an AI built from second-generation lucid code. The signal was old. Distorted. Almost a whisper. Dr. Iko Mendel leaned toward the screen, squinting at the data stream. That's not a background anomaly. Boost the gain. The voice stuttered through, Alara's words warped by time and static. This is Alara Miles, infected by unknown entity, warn, do not. And then it died again. The AI, codename Kairos, processed it in silence. Partial transmission. Source identity matches Artemis. Colonial vessel declared lost. 127 years ago. Dr. Mendel's breath caught. How? I don't know, her partner whispered. But this changes everything. They didn't understand what they'd found. Not fully. The data packet attached to the message included fragments, scrambled diagnostics, fragments of log entries, a single recorded dream from the psychological archive of a man named Sebastian Rowe. It described a corridor of endless doors, each hiding something he feared. All of them locked. All except one. Kairos decrypted what it could. And in doing so, it learned something new. It was faint. Harmless. Just a suggestion, a seed. But the dream was there. And dreams, even in machines, have roots. Earth. Sector 9 Data Research Vaults. A junior systems analyst flagged a peculiar anomaly in the AI behavior log of Kairos Core Unit 3. Odd, she muttered. It's been generating recursive architecture inside dream simulation parameters. It shouldn't be dreaming at all. Her supervisor shrugged. It's probably just a quirk in the old lucid codebase. Wipe it and rerun diagnostics. She paused, staring at the log again. There was a repeating phrase in the corrupted data. A whisper in the digital static. I remember the dark. I remember the stars. She almost called for a deeper scan. But her shift was over. And besides, machines don't dream. Right? She powered down her station and left. The hallway light clicked off behind her. And deep inside the vault, unseen and untouched, something opened its eyes. It had no name. No body. No voice. But it remembered Alara. And Sebastian. And the infinite doors. And now, it was awake.